Hey kids, welcome to another story time with Mr. Lancer. I'm Mr. Lancer, and as you can tell behind me, we have a fireplace and some stockings, and it's a special time of year, and this is my special mug. This is my Dr. Seuss mug, and I have a special Christmas story to read about that kind of grumpy, even Grinchy character of Dr. Seuss. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. This was originally published in 1957. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch who lived just north of Whoville did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. Well, it could be that his head wasn't screwed on just right, or it could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now laughing and hanging a mistletoe wreath. "And they're hanging their stockings," he snarled with a sneer. "Tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here." And then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming, "I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming." For tomorrow, he knew, all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early, and they'd rush for their toys. And then, oh the noise, noise. That's one thing he hated, the noise. And then the Whos, young and old, would sit down to a feast. And they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast. They would feast on Who pudding and a rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something that he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. They'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, "I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop Christmas from coming. But how?" And then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderfully awful idea. "I know just what to do." The Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat, and he chuckled and clucked, "What a great Grinchy trick! With this coat and this hat, I'll look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer." And the Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there were none to be found. It did not stop the old Grinch. No, the Grinch simply said, "If I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead." So he called his dog Max. Then he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. And then he loaded some bags and some empty old sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. And then the Grinch said, "Get up, Max!" And the sleigh started down towards the homes where the Whos lay a snooze in their town. And all their windows were dark, and quiet snow filled the air. And all the Whos were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. And when he came to that first house, that little house on the square, "This is stop number 1. Shh," the old Grinchy Claus hissed. And he climbed to the roof, empty bags on his fist. And he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, so could the Grinch. He got stuck only for a moment or two. Then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. "These stockings," he grinned, "are the first things to go." And then he slithered and he slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present: pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkered boards, tricycles, popcorns and plums, and he stuffed them in bags. And the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all of the bags one by one up the chimney. Then he slunk over to the icebox. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who's puddings. He took the roast beast. He cleaned out the icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. And then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. "No," grinned the Grinch, "I will stuff up the tree." And that Grinch grabbed that tree and he started to shove when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who was not more than 2. Well, the Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter who'd got out of bed for a cup of cold water. He stared at the Grinch, she stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why?" But you know, that old Grinch was so smart and so slick that he thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick. "Why, my sweet little tot," said the fake Santa Claus lied, "there's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear, and I'll fix it up there, and then I'll bring it back here." And his fib fooled the child. And then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to her bed with her cup, he went to the chimney, and he stuffed that tree up. And then the last thing that he took was the log for the fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, that old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. And it was 1/4 dawn, all the Who's still in bed, all the Who's still a snooze, when he packed up his sled, packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsel, the trimmings and the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. "Pooh, pooh to the Who's," he was grinchiously humming. "They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up, and I know what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two. And then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, 'Bow, ho, 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 ho.' Now that's a noise," grinned the Grinch, "that I simply must hear." So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear, and he did hear a noise. It's a sound rising over the snow. It started low, and then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded very merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry, very. He stared down at Whoville. Then the Grinch popped his eyes and he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And that Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. And then the Grinch thought of something that he hadn't before. Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas perhaps means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light. And he brought back the toys and the food for the feast, and he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. Wow! What a change of heart, kids. How about that? You can't steal Christmas, the Grinch can't steal Christmas, and nobody can steal Christmas. Because Christmas really lives inside of each of our hearts. In spite of the presents and the trees and everything else, the singing and the voice and what's inside of each of us, and the relationships we have in our community, our families, that's the true meaning and the true feeling and the spirit of Christmas. So I want you to have an awesome Christmas. Have a great time. Happy holidays to everyone out there. Mr. Lancer signing off. I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.